I'm going to give the public a quick housekeeping overview of the way the meeting's going to go, because we're going to turn this, after we do some educational stuff, we're going to turn this into your meeting, so you can come to the microphone and comment and ask questions about this resource management plan. We've been working on it for over a year, and the genesis of this meeting is because of the BLM and their failure to educate the public in Escalante, Utah, in Garfield County, in Escalante, Utah, the other evening. I went to that meeting, and it was like a science fair, and we had a lot of frustrated people, including my good friend Wade Barney, and he says, we just want to ask a question and get the honest answer. We need to know. Well, I announced that night we were going to try to do this, because there was a lot of frustrated people, nobody more frustrated than me. And so it's really good. We know a lot because we've been working on it for over a year, this resource management plan. But the public doesn't. And the BLM is supposed to educate the public during this so-called scoping process, public process, and they haven't done it. So we've got everything to answer any question you have. We've got slides. We can go to the map. We don't want to bore you with a lot of talk from us. This is your meeting, but we do have a special person here tonight, the Attorney General of the state of Utah. And so before I introduce him, he's going to be our speaker to start this off. I'll just continue with how this is going to go when we get to the public question and answer segment of the meeting. We'll have a microphone out in the audience to pass around. If you have a desire to speak up, and you're all going to get an opportunity to speak. If somebody come here tonight and wants to talk or ask a question, we're going to stay here until midnight if we have to, and get this done. So with that, I got to tell you a little bit about General Reyes. He has been a warrior for us. He's got so much litigation in the court that has saved us on so many things. Monument lawsuits, grazing lawsuits. I mean, we're constantly, as in the grazing community, we're being litigated constantly. I mean, when we get up in the morning, Sue files a lawsuit, for just because we got out of bed. I mean, it's to that point. And the same thing with roads and everything else. So with that, you've got to have somebody to help you. We're the size of the state of Connecticut. 93% of this county is federal, and we got 5,000 people. How do we fight it? We go get help. And we get help from PLPCO, that's the Public Land Policy Office, and their attorneys. But we go to the big guy, the Attorney General. And by the way, I will say for the Governor Cox has been very aggressive helping us with this issue. Very supportive and very aggressive. So I do think they both need a round of applause, because you got to have the right people fighting to win the fight. It's kind of like you can't go into a bar and whip 20 people alone. You got to have help. And that's kind of like, that's what this is. It's just like a fight. We're constantly fighting. So with that, I won't bore you with any more of my talk. Like I say, Commissioner Taylor took the bullet, and he's going to be the moderator when we get to that segment. And with that, I want to introduce my good friend, Sean Reyes, Attorney General of Utah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Commissioner. I recently got back from Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, it is great to be back in America again with you all here in Garfield County. Thank you for coming tonight. How many of you from Garfield County? I just want to kind of say, whew. Now we have some visitors and guests too. We have some from Kane County, right? Who's from Kane? Come on, a few, yeah. Sevier, There were a couple. Maybe they're still making their way. Paiute, Wayne County. Yes, thank you. All of you are so important to us. I also want to recognize, in addition to Governor Spencer Cox, who Leland mentioned, our legislature. They've been tremendous support for us. We have a lot of legislators who care deeply about these issues and who are working closely with us, and they give us the resources we need in the AG's office to be able to go to battle on your behalf. Leland, though, there is no greater public servant in the state of Utah, and y'all in Garfield County are so blessed to have a warrior like him who's been such a tremendous partner of ours. Could we embarrass him for just a second and give him a big round of applause? There are people who talk a lot, and there are people who get stuff done. That's Leland. There are show horses, and then there are workhorse. That's Leland. What I say, public servant, you notice I didn't say politician, right? Because I think politics is a dirty word. Why do I say that? Anybody know the definition of politics? You've heard this before, probably some of you, but it comes from two root words, two cognates. The first part of the word poly means many. Thank you. The second part of the word, ticks, are little blood-sucking insects, and when you put those two parts together, you have the definition of politics. I'm joking, right? Kind of. But the embodiment of politics, the selfishness of it, are politicians who always ask, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? What's this position or this title going to do for me? How will it serve my interests? Public servants ask the opposite question. How do I serve this office and the people that it represents? And again, I want to highlight not just Leland, but many others who are here today. I don't have time to name them all, and I'll offend somebody. We have county commissioners, we have city council members, we have sheriff, at least I saw Sheriff Gleave here earlier, we have sheriff's law enforcement, we have county attorneys, and we have you all, the citizens of the great state of Utah who make America great. And it's such an honor to represent you, to fight for you, to be here with you. Some of you don't realize this because I smell like a city boy, I know. I live in the city now, and I grew up in Los Angeles. But every summer I would go home to Hawaii, where my mom is from on the Big Island. If any of you know that area, there's a big ranch called the Parker Ranch up in North Kohala where we're from. And for us, life was getting up really early. Like, I look back and I thought, man, I think that's a form of child slave labor, but when it's your family, it doesn't matter. 4 or 5 in the morning, and we worked all day. FFA, 4-H, our mascot was the Cowboys. And when you have that in your DNA, in your blood, and you've grown up country strong, and you understand what it's like and the values that you all don't talk about, but you all live, that's still inside me, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, because it's really easy when we're sitting in the Capitol in Salt Lake City to forget about the issues that are most pressing to you, issues that could potentially put you out of business, that could potentially take away your livelihood, that could ruin generations of hard work. And I so appreciated Mr. Barney's invocation and talked about our pioneer heritage and our liberties and what we stand for. Just to give you a little hint about how much I love rural counties, when I launched my campaign in 2010, the first time, Utah Attorney General, no one knew who I was, no one really cared. There were bigger dogs, there were more powerful people, but I really felt like I could stand up and be a voice. And so I launched it in a rural county, launched my campaign. I went to my first political event in a rural county. I won't embarrass them and say which one, but it was great. The GOP, I'm a Republican, so the GOP chairman said, son, I understand you want to speak to the group tonight. And I said, yes, sir, I'd like to. He said, well, I just want you to know, you get 1 minute. He said, if you go over 1 second over that, I will shoot you. And he was serious. And I've worked with him now for 20 years, and he was serious then. He's still really serious. But I said, well, I understand your terms, sir, and I accept. I said, but know one thing. I carry, and if you don't take me out with your first shot, I shoot back. He looked at me. He said, son, you just earned yourself another minute tonight. Good luck. Why am I talking about that? I don't know. I threw away the remarks that my awesome team had prepared because a lot of them were technical and legal, and we're going to get into that. We want to answer technical and legal questions that you have because you deserve to know, you know. But I really just wanted to talk from the heart because I understand that this community and the surrounding communities, you all have been tremendous stewards of this blessed land. And again, from my roots in Hawaii, our land is sacred, our aina. And I think this land is sacred. And you all have done such a good job. When I say you all, that's your ancestors, that's your families. But you are the living embodiment now of those pioneers and all of that hard work over the last many years. And you have serious concerns about this federal resource management plan, and you should. And the federal government is not listening to you. You have leaders like Leland Pollock who are strong and loud and shouting from the rooftops. And even then, the federal government is not listening. You even have people who work for the federal government who are from our communities. They're us, and they know what's potentially coming. And they've warned their bosses, and they've explained the importance of what we have and why it's so good and why we need to protect it. And still, the federal government is not listening. We've talked to them, and no surprise, they're not listening to us either. And so we wanted you to know that there's a time for talking, there's a time for negotiating, there's a time for trying to reason and explain. But when the federal government refuses to hear us, there is such a thing as the 10th Amendment. We are sovereign states. We created, I say we, local government created the federal government. And I think they forget too often that they only have power derived from us, from we the people. We give it to them. Any authority they have comes from us. And so we've been hard at work with our partners, consulting, coordinating with our rural leaders, working with the legislature, working with the governor's office and PLIPCO to put together lawsuit or lawsuits, if necessary, to push back against the federal government, to give you some relief, some breathing room, so that you can continue to live the good lives that you live and continue to make America the greatest nation on earth. How are we going to do that? That's what this is all about. Now, we may not open up the entire playbook, may not tell you exactly who's going to block where and which route we're going to run when, but we are here to tell you when the game's going to start and how many players we're going to put on the field and how serious we are. We're recruiting top talent. We have some already. We're going to bring it. I don't want this to be misinterpreted because I'm not making an exact analogy, but most of the world is focused on the Middle East because they're on the brink of, well, they're already at war, but we're on potentially the brink of a world war there. And understandably and rightfully, people are focused on that. But I got to tell you, right here in our own backyard, there's been a war brewing. And the federal government is not listening, and they're coming, and we have to respond and fight back, not with guns and bombs, not with violence, but with the law and all of the tools that we have available, the facts, reason, and you all. We will need your help. And so tonight, we're going to be asking you for your assistance in helping us gather more evidence, gather more facts, gather more information. We're going to ask your help to flood the comments going back to the federal government, and maybe they'll continue to fall on deaf ears there, but I feel like at least all of us can continue to try to wake them up. With that said, and that's the premise of why we're here, we care. My team, diverse team, we're here for you. We work for you. And I think too often you get neglected. You're a smaller population county or counties. So people drive by, and they don't listen. We really want to listen. We want your feedback. We want your input. We want to answer questions. We may not have the answers that you want to hear, but we're going to be honest and attempt to answer as best we can what we know. That's going to be the tenor for the evening. And I'm so glad that Commissioner Pollack allowed us to come together. I know you have families that you're separated from tonight. I know you have important things, but I appreciate you taking time to spend with us to help empower us to better protect you all, giving us more information, and hopefully in the process we'll be able to educate you a little bit about what's going on. We are not sitting on our hands at the Capitol. We've been working, as Leland said, for a year, and we will keep on working on this case and others. And speaking of others, I want to give you a quick preview. We want to go through as quickly as possible a couple of really big cases, tick through a couple of updates, all in all, maybe about 15 minutes, and then we'll hit what I think we're all here to talk about. You'll hear these words said over and over tonight: consistency, coordination, the things that the federal government is required to do with locals, but that we haven't seen, or at least seen enough of yet. That's going to be the crux of our lawsuit if things don't change, and we're not shy or bashful about letting them know. We're going to run the ball right through that hole. Again, I'm not going to give you the entire play, but it's going to come. So before I do that, let me give you first an update on the antiquities case. It might get a little technical, but we filed our lawsuit along with Kane and Garfield County against President Biden relating to Bears Ears and Grand Staircase in Utah Federal District Court. This was last year in August of 2022. I want to give you a little bit of the underpinnings of the case. What did we argue? The Antiquities Act authorizes a president to declare national monuments for 1, historic landmarks, 2, historic or prehistoric structures, or 3, other objects of historic or scientific interest. If a president declares a qualifying landmark, structure, or object as a national monument, the Act's second paragraph, and this is really important, a lot of people in D.C. like to gloss right over, allows him to reserve parcels of land as a part of the national monument, but only, quote, the smallest area compatible with the proper care and management of the qualifying landmark, structure, or object. In his proclamations, creating or recreating the Bears Ears and Grand Staircase reservations, President Biden tried to justify them by declaring that these are double the size of Delaware, the state, landscapes. He designated the landscapes themselves as national monuments because they were objects of historic or scientific interest. He tried to justify the reservations by declaring that long lists of really generic items such as petrified wood, bold plateaus and fences, and long lists of plants and animals such as potatoes and beavers were qualifying objects of historic or scientific interest under the Act. President Biden made no attempt to explain how 3.23 million acres constituted the, quote, smallest area compatible with the proper care and management of these supposed monuments. We all know the larger they are, the harder they are to manage. The fewer law enforcement, the fewer land management. It goes on and on and on. We were very confident in our case. However, recently, minor setback. In August, this just 2 months ago of this year, the district court dismissed our case. Judge Newfer concluded there's no set of circumstances in which any plaintiff anywhere can sue to challenge a president's reservation of a national monument under the Antiquities Act. No matter what injuries a plaintiff is suffering and no matter what land or ocean the president reserves as a national monument, according to the judge, nobody can ever challenge it in court. Needless to say, we disagree mightily. Judge Newfer's decision relied on the doctrine of sovereign immunity, which is, generally bars lawsuits against the government, but courts have long recognized an exception to that. He also held that the Administrative Procedures Act, which expressly waives sovereign immunity, does not authorize plaintiffs to challenge the BLM interim management plans governing the national monument reservations because they're labeled interim, so playing fast and loose with titles. I want you to know, again, we did not accept this minor setback. We've appealed the decision to the 10th Circuit, and we're filing our brief on Monday, and in that brief, we will be making some very compelling arguments. For example, the federal government has previously made these same arguments that Judge Newfer reviewed, but other courts have correctly rejected those arguments. The DC Circuit, which is probably the most friendly circuit for the government, has always rejected the argument that Judge Newfer, in fact, upheld. The Antiquities Act in the DC court explained the act itself places limits on the president's discretion so that review is available to ensure the president has not exceeded his statutory authority. So in the very act itself, there is language that indicates that it is reviewable and that it can be challenged. And I'll leave you with this on this case to show you the strength of what we're arguing on behalf of you all, our citizens. Chief Justice Roberts of the Supreme Court said 2 years ago that federal courts can enforce the Antiquity Act's discernible limits, which again necessarily means that Judge Newfer's holding in the case is wrong. We're confident in our case at the 10th Circuit, and if not there, we will take it all the way to the United States Supreme Court to make that decision. I want to quickly introduce to you a superstar, not just in the legal community, but in leadership. She's one of the highest ranking women leaders in the history of the state of Utah. She is our Solicitor General, the best Solicitor General in the United States. She's a local Utah girl, grew up in a law enforcement family, went away for a while and argued in more circuit courts of appeals than probably all of us who are lawyers here combined. And she came back to Utah because she loves it here, and she's been such a champion and warrior for us. Melissa Holyoke's going to talk about a case that is of utmost importance, and then maybe introduce Kathy. So I'm going to turn it over to our Solicitor General, Melissa Holyoke. Give her a hand, ladies and gentlemen, and bring her on up.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. So for the last 3 years, I have been, Attorney General Reyes appointed me 3 years ago, and I've had the pleasure of being in charge and leading the effort on federal overreach. So we have sued President Biden dozens of times. And so I want you to all know that because this is so important to us. It's a very big priority of Attorney General Reyes to make sure we push back against the federal government when we see that overreach. And so I'm glad he talked about the monuments case. We came down here last year and we toured with Plipco and we visited the monument and I drove around with Jerry. We got stuck in some sand. I don't know how we got out, but it was great. A good driver. That's right. That's how we got out. But it's so fantastic because we were able to meet with folks, and of course, and we teamed up with the counties to sue that. The case is actually called Garfield versus Biden, and to work with everyone. But to come back and see the folks that we're doing this great work for is so important and so rewarding to us. So we're excited for that. I did want to share about one other case that I think is really important that you may not have heard about. And this is called the Good Neighbor Ozone case. So what happened was a few years ago, the EPA put out a rule that said, okay, states, you need to look at the ozone that you're sending over your borders. Are you a good neighbor? Let's look and see. And so we complied. We complied with the rule. What we did is we looked at our ozone going to Colorado, and we said, are we significantly contributing to Colorado's problem so that they can't comply with the Clean Air Act? We looked at that and we said, we're not. We're good. We complied. The EPA sat on our state plan for 2 years, and then just this year denied it and imposed a federal plan. So why is this important? It's important for many reasons. This rule is directed to try and kill the coal plants and the coal mines. We worked with Sevier County in partnering with them, and we got a good declaration from them talking about the impact to Utah, and we filed a motion to stay. So that rule is now stayed. It's not in effect, but we're continuing to fight that. But it's important because if it goes into effect, it's going to cost millions of dollars to have those plants come into compliance, and it's going to cost that money. It's going to hit us in your pocketbooks because our electric bills will go up by about. The bill on that, the millions of dollars, Utahns are going to be paying about 40% of that. So it's a really important case. We're working on it. We're pushing back. It's not in effect yet, but I did want you to be aware of that and that we're pushing back on it. So that's just one of those cases. Again, the monuments case is another one. And I'm going to call out Kathy to talk about some of the other public lands cases. These are important cases and all the overreach. And we just wanted the opportunity to talk to you about those while we have you here. So Kathy, why don't you come on up?
Hi, I'm Kathy Davis. I am the Public Lands Section Director for the Attorney General's Office, and I manage most of the litigation that we file on behalf of PLIPCO and the state of Utah. I wanted to just give you a brief overview of the various areas that we filed litigation in. Our primary goal at PLIPCO is to preserve access to the public lands, and in that light, a great deal of our litigation involves what's called RS 2477, which are the roads that give the public access to the public lands. In the course of filing litigation, we filed 22 cases in 22 of the 29 Utah counties. There are 7 counties along the Wasatch Front that don't have any BLM land, so we didn't file cases in those counties. To date, we've taken over 850 preservation depositions. That's preserving testimony of people who have used these roads, and that testimony has been used in 2 trials so far to establish that there is public use of these roads prior to 1976. Our next round of depositions, our last round was just in San Juan County, where we tried to focus in that one large area because there are so many roads there. Our next round of depositions, we're going to still be in San Juan County, Grand County, and Carbon County. We are still looking for witnesses. If people have personal knowledge or have personally used these roads, please come and talk to me. We'd love to take your deposition. If you have family records, that's admissible evidence. We would love to take a look at that. So in addition to the 22 lawsuits that we have pending in the 22 counties, we have what's called the Bellwether case, which has 15 roads that exemplify all of the legal issues that are still outstanding on determining what it is an RS 2477. That case went to trial in 2020. We are still doing post-trial motions, and it's moving forward slowly. We have some arguments that are going to be held in the 10th Circuit next month, and we also just finished briefing on a case where we had 3 roads to which we were awarded title, but the court needed to determine the width or the scope of the road, and we finished briefing that last week. The other areas that we have filed litigation in, we have 2 cases involving the Colorado River, 4 cases involving water issues, 5 cases involving endangered species issues, the 3 monument cases, 1 case involving overreach by the federal government in not complying with the new Dingle Act that was passed that covered most of Emery County, where they failed to consult with the state on restrictions regarding target shooting. We have 2 oil and gas cases. We have 6 active cases involving travel management planning issues. In that regard, there was a case, a record of decision that was just issued on September 28th in the Moab area, covering the Gemini Bridges Labyrinth Canyon area. They closed 114 miles of RS 2477 roads that are claimed by the state and are subject to a lawsuit, and 317 total miles of roads within the planning area. So we are filing an appeal of that record of decision this week, probably tomorrow, and then we are filing a petition for the stay of that management plan. We have 2 oil and gas cases, 4 grazing cases. We've been involved in the Uinta County Railroad and the case involving the Northern Corridor down in Washington County. So that's about 68 active litigation cases that PLIPCO has pending right now. And plus, we have other issues that we have not yet filed litigation on, but we are investigating the possibilities. So PLIPCO is very hard at work in protecting access to the public lands. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Kathy. Kathy Davis, ladies and gentlemen. Before we jump into the big case that we're here for, again, I wanted to highlight one other thing about our Solicitor General, and it's not just Utah. Utah has taken the lead on a number of cases, and we've rallied other states to join the fight and the cause, and sometimes it's 24, sometimes it's 27 states. And just really quickly, these are all not necessarily public lands cases, but early in the Biden administration, he put a moratorium on development and extraction on public lands. Utah helped lead out on that. We filed a lawsuit against the administration, and we won, and we shut that entire rule down. Later, you might recall, during COVID, there was a rule that OSHA was going to mandate every small business to require each of your employees to get vaccinated, and if they weren't, they were going to fine you something ridiculous like $16,000 a day per employee, which was terrible. We joined with Texas, and 20 plus other states. We filed that, took that all the way to the United States Supreme Court to defeat the Biden administration again and shut that down to protect you, your small businesses. When ESG, these large funds, insurance companies, banks, come together to push a particular agenda, a very climate green agenda, and they take your dollars, that your retirement, your savings, your pensions, and they leverage those and use those. We have fought back, filed lawsuits in numerous different arenas, and have been successful at getting many of those players to back away from ESG. These are just, again, some of the types of the things that we are doing and working on to push back against the federal government, and we will attack this case with that same fervor and with the same commitment, and our hope is to have a similar result of success. So Melissa, can I have you help bring David, or is he going to, David, you're going to walk us through some slides? Okay, David Dodds, I'm going to bring him down this way or come around, and this is our show and tell portion.
Yeah. Thank you. You got to listen to a lot of great speakers tonight. Now you have to listen to me. David Dodds, I'm the Public Works Director for Garfield County, and I also deal with these public lands issues. I'm one of the many who have been working on this RMP. We've given a lot of input. None of it's been heard. So we're going to present to you as concisely as possible the resource management plan, what the BLM is actually planning, and our concerns that we have with it that we think you should be made aware of. So it's going to just take a minute. We'll go through these slides. Hold your questions, and we'll have a panel of experts up here to answer them after. Let's go ahead. So the background, just really quickly, the monument was established by President Clinton, and then it was reduced in size by President Trump. He kind of read into that proclamation, or the Antiquities Act, and said, you know, this is too large. We need to shrink it down to a manageable size. But then we got President Biden, and he reestablished those boundaries. And so each time that happened, they have to do a resource management plan to decide how to manage this monument. And so that's where we are now. That is why we have this resource management plan, is to look at those objects and see how we need to protect those. Plan format. So the plan itself is about 600 plus pages, And then you have appendices. It's, you know, about a 1,200-page plan. So if you want to go through it, here's the format. You know, it has the purpose and need, which is to protect monument objects. Chapter 2 has all the alternatives. There's 4 alternatives, A, B, C, and D. And they're all different. They all have different goals, and we'll go through those. Chapter 3 has the environmental consequences. So they're analyzing what's going to happen if we pick alternative A, what's going to happen if we pick alternative B. So it goes through those consequences, and we have issues with that as well. And then chapter 4 is consultation and coordination. I have up there, this is a joke, right? Because they have talked to us, and we've given them our ideas, our goals. We've given the state's resource management plan, our resource management plan. Unfortunately, none of those things are being implemented in this plan, and that's what has us really concerned. Next slide. So just to present the alternatives real quick, there's alternative A. This is the baseline condition. So this is like the Trump 2020 plan. The Garfield County had a lot of say in this. Kane County had a lot of say in this. And we got a lot of our goals into the plan. We were actually really quite proud of this plan. And so that's the no change. They can select that. It's never likely that they ever select this alternative. Alternative B, that allows for maximum discretion, discretionary uses. So maximum grazing, maximum use of the resources, you know, camping, hunting, fishing, the things we like to do for the most part. Alternative C, this is the preferred alternative. This is what BLM is focusing in on, saying this is what we want to do. And it's zonal management. So they have a front country area, a passage area, outback area, and primitive area. And managing those differently. So front country passage areas, these are more recreational uses. Outback and primitive area, you're walking there, right? There's no transportation there. You're walking out there. More of a protected area. And just to kind of give you perspective, the primitive area is 900,000 acres. So half of the monument is primitive. You're walking. So, and then alternative D, this is the scariest one as far as Garfield County and the state's goals. Natural process. So basically lock it up, leave it, let God take care of it. And so no active management, very limited use on our multiple uses. So these are the main issues that Garfield County and the state has. Very first one, the objects aren't identified in this plan. They're telling us we need to protect objects. Okay, what objects? Where are they? If you look in the plan, there is not a list of objects. And that's what we've been harping on them. Hey, give us a list of objects, we'll protect them. That's not in the plan. 2, large reductions in grazings they're looking at. Limitations on range improvements, road closures, I'm gonna take this out. Closure to the Little Desert OHV area, limitations on target shooting, limitations on wood gathering, limitations on vegetation treatments, right-of-way exclusion areas. So right-of-way exclusion areas like we're talking about power lines, water lines, key infrastructure that we need to grow our community. Obvious impacts to the economy and obvious impacts to our schools as they look at these alternatives. So first things first, we're going to talk about grazing issues. This is kind of one of the big deals for us because it impacts our communities so much. So alternative A, again, that's the baseline condition. That's what we currently have. That would allocate 107,995 AUMs. That's an animal unit month. That's how long one cow, calf pair can stay out on the range. So that's our current level. And then as you go down through these alternatives, they start cutting. So alternative B, we're losing, it's down to 105,000 AUMs, losing about 3,000 AUMs. Alternative C, 95,000 AUMs allocated, a reduction of close to 13,000 AUMs. And then alternative D, again, scary for Garfield County, a reduction of about 68,000 AUMs. That's a huge impact to our economy. So economically, if we choose alternative C, the BLM estimates an economic impact, a loss of our economic output of about $800,000, which for our small communities, that's huge. We are arguing that, hey, you need to look at that again because we feel like that's even lower than it should be. And then alternative D, you're up to $4 million of an economic cut that we're looking at. So again, no vegetation treatments solely for the benefit of livestock storage. So they're not only going after major cuts, they're going after, even if they allow you to graze, they're not going to let you improve your grazing. The other thing, they're going to, if somebody voluntarily relinquishes an allotment, they are going to retire it permanently. So if somebody gives it up, it's gone. You cannot take it. And so that's another method I see of them potentially removing grazing from the monument. Next slide. Additional issues with grazing. Allotments opened under the 2020 plan. So we actually got them to open some allotments up under the 2020 plan. They're going to close those back down. No range improvements until rangeland health assessments are complete. We know how good the BLM is doing work. They're not. So you guys aren't going to be able to do range improvements until they get their work done. That's really scary. Grass banks, they're taking away grass banks, which is crazy. Grass banks are there for when you have a bad year, you can move your cattle onto those grass banks and preserve the ecology around you. They're removing those. They hate you so much that they're willing to hurt themselves under this plan. And then so overall, it's going to impede your ability to grow, adapt, or improve your operation. It's just going to make things harder for you. So these are the maps. So this is alternative A. You can see these areas that we made available for grazing, closing them back down under the 2020 plan. Next slide. Alternative B. Again, sorry, so alternative A, baseline condition. There was some that we conceded that were closed beforehand. They just made that permanent under alternative A. Alternative B, those are those that we made available. They're closing them back down. Alternative C, this is where they start going after active grazing units. And this is all in the Glen Canyon NRA on the east side of the map there. That's where they're focusing, saying, hey, we want to remove active grazing allotments here, close them. And that's 12,000 AUMs. That's a pretty significant output of livestock. And then alternative D, look at that. That is, close to half the monument. They're taking grazing away. 70,000 AUMs. That's a lot of cattle, a lot of our economic output, especially for these small communities. That's really scary. Transportation, okay. Another major issue. So under alternative A, under all alternatives, there's open, limited, or closed. Open means that you can drive a vehicle anywhere you want. Limited means that you can drive a vehicle on a designated route. Closed means that's closed, there's no routes there, no driving at all. So under alternative A, we have a little 116-acre area near Escalante where you can drive wherever you want, kind of a little recreation area, a lot of fun. Alternative B, again, they're starting to look into closures. So now they're closing half the monument, closed 953,000 acres to travel. Alternative C, more, closing 1.2 million acres to travel. Alternative D, closing 1.6 million acres to travel. That's significant. Oh. Motorized and mechanized, yes, thank you. So what I want to make clear here is the BLM will tell you we are not closing any roads, which I think is very misleading. They're telling you that because right now they have some designated routes. And under this plan, they're not closing any designated routes. But we as Garfield County recognize there are routes out there, thousands of miles of them, that you guys are actively using currently that are undesignated routes. And in this way, they are going to be closing those. So alternative A, all roads will be considered. Even if they're in future travel management, all roads will be considered to be designated or undesignated. But alternative B, now we start reducing this. In travel management, they're going to say this area is closed, this area is open, And only the routes in the open areas can be considered for designation. Same with C, same with D. We're going to have issues there. So let's go to the maps just for time's sake. Who's it? Oh. Okay, so here's the map. This area is green. So anywhere that's green, they can consider a route. Whether it's designated, undesignated, in future travel management planning, they can consider all routes, which that's what we asked for under the Trump plan. Let's go out and individually look at routes, understand their impact, and decide if we want them open or closed. And then people will stay on them. Next slide. Alternative B. Okay, now we're looking at closed areas. And the black lines on this map, we are seeing, hey, this is where Garfield or Kane County has identified roads that are undesignated but are still being used, which we claim. And so under this alternative, there's a closure of about 170 miles of existing routes. They will not be able to be considered for future travel management. They'll be removed from consideration. Next slide. Alternative C, a lot more red area. Now we're looking at approximately 520 miles of routes that currently aren't designated, but now they can never be designated because they're removing it from consideration. Alternative D, again, scary. That's scary. I don't know how you guys are going to manage livestock. I don't know how you guys are going to manage recreation. The entire area, all those black lines are routes that will be removed from future consideration, saying, hey, that's closed. You guys, we're not going to look at them. We're not going to look at them for travel management. They're done. Really scary.
Dave, how much did they consult with you guys before putting out those maps?
0 on that. On travel management, they said, we're going to do travel management in the future. All we're going to do is designate open and closed areas. So we figured they might have a few little closed areas where there's an object. Okay. No, they are doing travel management by they're doing it themselves because they're making these areas unavailable, and they're not going to do, in future travel management, all those routes will be removed from consideration.
So before producing these maps, you had no idea this was going on, right?
Nope.
That's consultation.
Exactly.
That's a joke, by the way.
Thank you, Mark. So when they say we're not closing routes, technically they're not. They're not closing designated routes, but they are making unavailable these undesignated routes for future consideration. Forestry management. This is another one it's really frustrating. So under Alternative A, under the Trump plan, we consulted with them and we said we're going to allow for commercial, non-commercial wood harvesting except in the wilderness study areas. So that's a tool. Commercial wood harvesting is a big tool because we can focus on areas that need forestry management and do that work. Non-commercial wood harvesting, that's you going out, cutting posts, cutting Christmas trees, cutting firewood, okay? So under Alternative B, they took out commercial wood harvesting, took the tool out of the toolbox, threw it away. And they're going to allow non-commercial wood harvesting with a permit in certain areas. Same with Alternative C and same with Alternative D. And let's look at those maps. So this is Alternative A. That's the WSA. That's the Wilderness Study Area. And we said, okay, we're not going to do any cutting in there. That's a big chunk, but we'll deal with it. Alternative B, again, they're allowing for maximum discretionary use here. So pretty similar to A, actually. They just closed a few more areas. I think this is the primitive zone. Now this is Alternative C. This is their preferred alternative for you. Where are you going to go cut a Christmas tree? If you live in Escalante, if you live in Tropic, Cannonville, Henryville, or a fence post, or collect wood, this monument boundary abuts your community. And so they are really limiting you on where you can actually go get some wood. And that's Alternative D, no non-commercial wood harvesting, period. ACEC, so there's areas of environmental concern and research natural areas. You'll hear these as ACECs, NRAs. These are special designation areas that special interest groups really propose and say, hey, we want extra protection here. Generally, they limit multiple use. They're going to say, hey, we really want to protect this area. I thought we were protecting monument objects, but now they're protecting things, I don't know why. So let's go through the maps. Alternative A, we only had one research natural area. That was No Man's Mesa, 2,800 acres, very small. Alternative B, this is the maximum discretionary use alternative. Well, you see, alternative B has the most of these ACECs and RNAs because they're saying, oh, we're going to give you the maximum discretionary use except for here, 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 and here, and here, and here. And so they kind of they kind of trick you this way because they're saying, well, we're going to remove 90,000 acres from those discretionary uses. Alternative C, 57,000 acres. Alternative B, 2,800 acres. Because alternative D, they're saying, well, you can't really go in there anyway, so we don't care. So here's the maps of that. That's the current NRA, a little blip on the map there, 2,800 acres. Alternative B. These, again, are saying, hey, we're going to look at these special designations, extra protection, likely major limitations in your discretionary uses. They haven't decided them exactly yet, what the limitations will be, but that's where they will be looking at them. And then alternative C, a little bit less. Alternative D, again, back to the original because you can't go in there anyway. Target shooting. This cracks me up. Alternative A, you can go target shoot wherever you want. It's not a big deal. There are rules that you need to be a certain distance from houses and roads and things like that. Just very common sense. But they hate target shooting. Okay, here's alternative B. Major limitations, primitive areas. Go ahead, next one. Alternative C, a little bit more. Alternative D, they don't want you target shooting anywhere. Again, for these communities at front, the monument, where are you going to go? Very limited in your choices of use. So that was as fast as I could do it. What we want you to do, why we have you here, is because we are doing everything we can. We are meeting with them constantly. Attorney General's office told you they are ready to take steps if the BLM does not choose appropriately to integrate our goals. But what you can do is comment. You can submit your comments online. I will show you that in a minute because I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi. But you can submit electronically or through mail. I do have about 50 prepaid envelopes here. We will pass these out. And what I'll do is I'll leave them in the back. Prepaid envelopes, if you want to write in just a comment, grab one of these prepaid envelopes. If you want to do it online, take a picture right there. That's the web link. I'll send it. I'll have some handouts as well with that address. We really need you to comment. We really need you to say, hey, you guys need to analyze the impacts to my community because it's going to impact your schools. If you lose $4 million out of your community, there's going to be people moving out. There's going to be loss of schools. There's going to be loss of children in schools. This is a big impact to your community.
Deadline date.
Is there a place, if they want to know in their comments even more things to put in, is there like a website or something that we have a resource page that can list some of those impacts?
Go ahead, Reg. Let me pass that over to you.
So we'd be happy, Reg Johnson, I'm the director of Utah's Public Lands and Governor's Public Lands Advisor. We have a couple of attorneys here that work with our office. We're happy to help you with those. We also have the slide deck that we can share with you. What I would recommend is that you use the slide deck as kind of a guide on your comments. And be as specific as you can. If your families use this area for dispersed camping, if you have an allotment out there, if you cut Christmas trees out there, if you just like to go out there and ride your side-by-side, make sure you're specific in your comments and that those comments are unique, and provide as many impacts as you can in your comments to the items that you see will restrict your use on the landscape. So. This is actually the county. We help the county with this, but the county has it, but we all have it and we can share it. Where can we get access to the slide deck?
I will post that on our website. What I'll do is go to garfield.utah.gov and go to Public Works, and I'll have a link there at the Garfield County website. Yeah, yep, feel free to. I was just going to say with those prepaid, if you plan on submitting online comments, pass those prepaid envelopes to the next person. I think we didn't quite get enough of those. Go ahead, Dave.
One thing too, I had somebody approached me at church on Sunday asking for the link that they could send to their kids. Lonnie Pollock's boy works for I think an oil mineral company in Texas, and their company is facing similar issues in Texas for oil and natural gas extraction and stuff. So take a picture of this, send it to your kids, have them comment too.
There's a QR code right here they can, in the paper.
Oh, there's a QR code in the byway. You receive that, where you just take a picture of it. It'll take you directly to where you can comment, okay?
Yes, thank you. Really quick, there is a deadline. November 9th is the deadline. But if you do want to plan on commenting online, you go to that link. There's a little green box that says participate now. Click on that, and then click participate now again. And that will open up the page for you to comment. And I'll go back to the link so you can take a picture of it. But that's where you get that. That's how you comment online. And again, you can do written comments and send them in physically.
And ladies and gentlemen, there's no guarantee that if you fill it out that they're going to actually read it and listen to it. But if you don't fill it out, I guarantee you the message will never get there.
Yeah, and that supports our future fight, right? Is we can show that you guys had a voice, your voice wasn't heard. So I'll go ahead and pass the time back to Jerry. Do you want to? Reg is up. And I can go back to different slides if you guys have specific questions once we get in the question and answer period.
Jared, do you want to go first, or? All right. So did we depress you? I know it's depressing. We work on this every day and we get really frustrated with it. But also, I've always been told to never make people stand or sit for over an hour. So if you all want to stand up with me and stretch your legs a little bit, because we're not done yet and we got some questions coming up. This is like the seventh inning stretch. This is the seventh inning stretch. So let's just take a minute and stretch our legs for a second. Oh yeah, we have snacks apparently. So some kind of meal here, dried black soldier fly larvae. So if you need any, we'll pass those around. But it says free samples. Who needs cattle anyways? Tell me what, I'm going to eat my steak instead of eating those worms. But that's the only way I ever get a standing ovation. No, thanks a lot for being here with us, and I'm going to be a little more relaxed and not stand up with y'all, but maybe a little background on who I am. My family owned a ranch over here in Johns Valley for a number of years. We ran our horses over here on a section of land by Escalante during the winter, and I can tell you the biggest impact I see from the monument was the declaration of the monument. When I used to go down Hole in the Rock Road, that road was on the top of the landscape. When I go down there now, it's 4 to 6 feet cut in to the landscape because the county has to grade it so often. There were some paleontological resources I knew riding horses out there as a kid. I've gone back there now. They're gone. Don't know who took them, but they were there for 50 years while all of us were on the landscape and nobody touched them. Somebody recently in the last couple of years has taken them. That's the kind of concern that I have. The state is very, very, very interested in protecting paleontological and archaeological resources. You all have. You've been here for generations. My family's been here for generations. We have a deep respect for the land and the resources that are on these lands. And it's a crying shame that you all are taking the hit when you all have been the best stewards of the land for over 150 years. So I want you to know I'm here to fight like hell for every right that you have, every resource that you've protected for 150 years. And that's what our office does. We do it extremely well, I think. I do want to give a shout out to the governor, who every time we've asked him for something, for this fight or other fights that we're fighting, he gives it to us. Has been very supportive of this. I was on texting with him earlier, wished all of us well tonight in this effort to push back. And I also want to give a shout out to Attorney General Reyes and Solicitor Holyoke. It's kind of a partnership between the legislature, the executive branch, and our Attorney General's office. Every time we've gone to them with a case that we think that we need to pursue, they've been all on board. There's not been one time that they've said, I'm not sure if we want to pursue that one. Every time. They always help us, articulate those in the best way. We bring in some outside counsel sometimes, some really high-powered attorneys. Nothing against my attorneys, but they do a great job too. But there's times when some extra help in the circuit courts is useful. But thank you, Attorney General Reyes, and thank you for all your help. We've been doing this enough. Let's open this up to some questions. And maybe before we go, was there anything you guys wanted to talk about specifically in what we've covered so far?
Happy to answer questions. We can get specifics as we need to.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We don't want to take any more of your time. This is your meeting. We want to get to that. We're here to answer questions. Like I said, we've been working on it extensively. I will say, as hard as it is to believe, when we started working on this planning process, it was much worse than what we're seeing on the screen. So kudos to this team who's been working on that, and Dave and others. So Jerry, it's up to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg. We really appreciate it. I just want to say, first off, I want to say thank you for all of you guys that have taken time to come and to listen to this and to get involved. It's going to take all of us plus a whole bunch more. So when you go home tonight, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to those people that believe the way you do, and let's stand together and let's make a difference. I've often said, if not us now, then who when? So we really need to be actively involved and working together for this. And we just appreciate you. I want to, first off, acknowledge, so that you know that you're not standing alone. Can I have the elected officials that are in this room stand for a minute? County commissioners, mayors, if you're an elected official. Senator Hinkins back there, he drove all the way down here from the good town of Farron, correct? You bet. We appreciate him. And so just look around. There's elected officials from Iron County, Wayne, Kane, Garfield, Paiute, from around rural Utah that want to be involved and help with this. And to be honest with you, to have General Reyes here with us tonight with his staff, great people, good partnerships, and we appreciate them. And we also appreciate our good governor who steps up and help, and our legislators. One of them's here tonight. We appreciate them. Okay, now we're going to turn the time over to, and I'll help moderate this. If you have a question, raise your hand. Let's get them a mic. I think Norm brought the snacks tonight. Anyway, you can thank him.
So I have a question, but might have a comment first. So everybody wants sustainability, but when you hear that word, you need to know the history of it. And in 1992, George Bush Sr. went to the Rio Accords, and he said, we will exceed Yes, we will exceed the statutes laid out in the Rio Accord. What was the Rio Accord? The United Nations. Then what he did is he came back to the United States government and he put in place something called the Sustainability Council in every department of the US government. So when you hear the word sustainability, beware. So my question is, there is an organization called the Delphi Method created by the RAND Corporation. It's used in every single one of these meetings that the BLM puts together. The BLM are the foot soldiers. I spent hundreds of hours studying this in 2010 when a good friend of mine in this audience was fighting the BLM, and I had no idea. I moved here from Salt Lake thinking I was going to escape. Well, I found out later, after meeting with Kathleen Clark, the governor's director of land management, a very disappointing individual, that we have this fight in Utah. So my question is, how in the world can these comments that we make ever make a difference when the strategy is, the BLM are the foot soldiers. There's a bigger plan, and that's the plan I'd like you to discuss with the people who are. If you don't know what that plan is, dig, and you'll find it.
I'll take a stab at that right now. And thank you for that question, and thank you so much for your comment, and I appreciate it so much. The comments do help. They help a lot. Just like Reg was telling his story and where he found those paleontological, whatever they were, what were they, footprints or something? I don't know. But they were missing. Every one of you has that story, and we need it. There's no limit, word limit on the comments. You need to tell your story. Tell your story on where your generational story, how you've had this in your family. I loved in the prayer thanking the pioneers. And you've had that. These are the generations or these lands have been with you, and you've been good stewards. Tell that story. Tell the story of how this will impact you specifically, your family, your community, your schools. Tell that story. And I'll tell you why the comments matter. So under the Administrative Procedures Act, when an agency gets those comments, they have to respond to those and when they are explaining their analysis. So the comments matter. So we would encourage you, yes, to tell your story and submit a comment.
If I can just add to that, that's why we also want you to make them very specific and lengthy if you can. Like if you have an allotment and how it's going to impact you, let's say you have an allotment that still has a note on it. Let them know that. Let them know that if you close those allotments that you're stuck with that note. So sometimes like groups will put together form letters. If you fill out a form letter and you're opposed to it, all those form letters count as one comment. And so that's how it makes it easy for them to apply or to respond to those. But to Melissa's point, they are required to respond to those comments. If yours are specific and in-depth, then they have to respond to each and every one of those. So it also delays the process a little bit more, and I don't know if you saw me wink, but that's a good thing for us right now.
Next question.
I'm Stanton Glaive. I run cattle and sheep over in Paiute County. I probably shouldn't even be here, but this involves us all because what happens here will happen to us. And I want to make just a few comments. Leland says I could if I come, so blame him if you want to blame somebody. But first of all, I want to tell Mr. Reyes he is the best Attorney General I've seen in Utah, but that's not saying too much. Because this land has been disposed of since these grazing rights. Anywhere on this land, there's a grazing right. And that means the land is disposed of. That means it's Utah's land. And until Utah stands up and takes their land back, this fight's going to go on and on and on. If it's Utah, if it ain't Utah, draw your boundary around what you claim. Because this fight, I've been fighting it since in 1970, this same thing where you could comment and they had so many objectives, but none of them was an increase. Everyone's the best you can come out with is status quo and everything else goes down. But my main comment I wanted to get here is I've been to battle or two, and an old man called me from Maine. Well, it wasn't Maine, it New Hampshire. And he said, son, he said, let me tell you something. He said, and don't you ever forget this. He says, in this country, there's a king. And he said, you're it. He said, you, the people, are the king. He said, and whatever you say goes. He said, and you have the right to own property. You have the right to life, liberty, and property. And remember that, he said, and if you want it protected, every one of these elected officials hold their hand up and take an oath to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. Right there is the only way you will ever beat these people or have a chance with them. You can go to all these meetings, and I must have been to 1,000 of them over the years. But if you want to take that stand, you can beat them right there, because we are the king here. This is, that's what he said. This is not old Mexico, and it ain't Great Britain. It ain't even Canada. He said, this country right here is the grand old United States of America. Your rights come from God, and God will protect those rights if you want to stand with him. If you want to let the bureaucrats run us, they'll run you right into the ground. And I've been in an argument or two with them, and I've had to bring the sheriff in, and they are scared to death of those sheriffs. And the reason they are is those sheriffs are elected by we the people. That sheriff in Garfield County holds all the authority you need to hold. He can arrest anybody that gets in your way. All you have to do is stand up for your property right and tell him to protect it. And if he don't figure he's got enough power, deputize you. If he'd put a badge on me, I'll stand up against any one of them, because then I'm the law. And that's your power right there. And I'll just say one more thing. If they come to push you too far, what to do is all of you go over to the courthouse over here to Garfield County or Kane County, take your BLM map in and show them what you got, put it in the county right there, pay your grazing fee to the county where it should be paid, and then just tell the sheriff to protect you. Let the BLM and all those other people do whatever they want. And that's another thing, that right is a right. It's different than a wood permit or a permit to go out riding bicycles on it or whatever. That permit we own is a right. And anyway, I've taken up more time than I need, and thank you.
Other questions?
You bet.
Thank you. My name is Hayden Ballard. I'm an attorney with the Utah Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office. I work for Reg Johnson, and he hates it when I say that, but I work for Reg Johnson.
He works with me, not for me.
So I'm one of the rotten Ballards from southern Utah. We run cows down in Kane County and on the Arizona Strip. So I've got dirt under my fingernails. I understand what y'all are going through. Somebody in the back hollered when Stanton started talking. They said, we're glad you're here. So I'd just like to echo that, Stanton. We're glad you're here. We're glad your crew's here. I'm glad there's a lot of cowboy hats in this audience. You guys are the ones that need to be here. And so honestly, pat yourself on the back for being involved, because really that's what we need. We need more of you guys with grease on your hands and cowboy hats on to be involved in this process. So thanks for coming, first of all. Stanton raised a couple of good points. He was talking about grazing rights there for a minute, and one of the most frustrating things about this entire RMP process is you look at that map we had behind us up here on those grazing allotment alternatives. There's a lot of red up there. I can sit here and I can point at a few of you that I know your allotments are red under C and D, right? And so you're sitting there thinking, you know what, doggone it. I bought this grazing allotment from so-and-so, and so you think, how can they just come and kick me off like that? And so a couple of things I wanted to bring up. The first thing, and I've had personal conversations with several of you about this already. The Taylor Grazing Act. Who in this room has heard of the Taylor Grazing Act? Raise your hand. All right, there's a lot of people in this room. How many of you have read it? less hands, but that's good. Go read it. You can look it up. Go read the Taylor Grazing Act, okay? And, well, I know you have. The reason is, go to Section 3. Go read Section 3 of the Taylor Grazing Act. It talks about how the BLM cannot refuse to reauthorize your permit if that permit is serving as collateral for a bona fide loan. That's language out of the law right there, okay? So what does that mean? When you went and bought your allotment, you probably went to FSA or you went to Western Ag Credit, whoever, State Bank, Southern Utah, and you said, hey, I'm buying this allotment. And they said, what do you have for collateral? And you said, well, I've got some base property and I've got about 1,000 AUMs or whatever your number is, right? And they say, okay, well, we're going to use that as your collateral, right? So if that's your collateral and you're still in debt and they still have a lien because they have to register that lien under the UCC, right? So there's a lien on those AUMs. If there's a lien on them and your allotment is in red on this plan, you can use that to your benefit because that provides you a level of protection. If that's serving as collateral, then they can't refuse to re-up your permit. So if you're on that chopping block, put that in your comment letter. If you're not on that chopping block, put that in your comment letter. Because, you know, like Stanton said, his allotments aren't being impacted. My allotments out on the strip aren't being impacted, but you know what they will? They will. We're next, right? If you're not on the chopping block now, you will be. So put that in your comment letter. And if you want more specifics, we got attorneys up here who are willing to talk. Second thing, and then I'll shut up. Second thing I want to bring up is under the regulations put out by the Council on Environmental Quality, that's what governs the NEPA process, right? Which is what this planning process is under. It's under NEPA. So under those regulations, the BLM has to put forward what they call a reasonable range of alternatives, okay? That's kind of key language. So that reasonable range of alternatives, when you look at this alternative range they've given us, they say, okay, alternative A, we're going to give you 107,000 AUMs, but under D, we're going to nix 2/3 of them. That is an unreasonable range of alternatives. That is one of the things we're analyzing is they've tried to essentially create compromise positions, right? Because if they present an alternative that is so far out there, like alternative D, then when they give you C, you think you got something. You think you got a win, even though you just lost 12,000 AUMs, right? That's about, what, 2,000 head of cattle for 6 months? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. So you need to put that in your comments and say, you know what, you violated NEPA, you violated your CEQ regs because you didn't give us a reasonable range of alternatives. You gave us a skewed range of alternatives and then expected us to be happy when you gave us B or C. So put that in there, you know, and that goes back to Stan's comments. You know, we're losing our freedoms here, and what can we do? Well, there's two things, right? And if there's ever any more questions, you feel free to give Plipco a call. We're willing to talk. So that's all I have to say on Stan's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. That brings up a good point. We had a meeting a month or so ago in Escalante where we helped facilitate people writing letters. We got people involved. I think they did it here in Tropic as well. And we have a group of people that is willing to help. If you want some help writing letters for this plan, against this plan, reach out to us. We'll get you the help that you need and the resources that you need to help you. At our last BLM meeting, I had a lady come up to me who's not from here, but lives here once in a while, and she was kind of getting on me about grazing, how we need to get rid of it. We need to, and I said, well, why did you move here? You moved here to be amongst us, and yet this is what's made this country so great is our heritage, our lifestyle here. And she says, because I love it here. Let me tell you something. You can love this area as much as I do, but you can't love it any more than I do. So that's what they need to realize is all of you out there, you're here because you love this area. Your family came into this area. It's our heritage. It's our way of life. Now, having said that, let's move along to the next question.
Do I have to push anything? Is it working?
Just talk, Sam.
All right.
You're good.
I'm Sam Spencer from Escalante. I represent about a 6th generation ranch, and we've been there forever. when I went to the BLM meeting in there, they had a copy of all the stacks of thousands of papers. It looked like to me about 1/3 of that was the climate change bullshit that they're gonna try to use against us, which there's climate scientists that says it's bullshit. It isn't me. It's people that are smart say that. And another thing, there's rumblings around that if they take our permits, they take our cows. You know, every rancher in this room right here, or in southern Utah, or in the West, knows Cliven Bundy. And by God, there's people that'll put cows on the desert, whether the government likes it or not. And it may come to that. I don't want to see that, but we're not going to give up. Not. There'll be no not. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Sam. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. I'm Doug Heaton. I was former county commissioner from Kane County. It was interesting, the counselor referred us to the Taylor Grazing Act, and in the very title of the act, it says this: to provide for the optimal management of the land pending its final disposal. And my question has to do with the final disposal thing. In 2012, Utah passed the Transfer of Public Lands Act. And since then, Utah state legislature's passed, I think, somewhere around 100 different bills relating to and preparing for that. Congress, the legislature has, I'm told, has appropriated money. We have probably the most constitution-friendly Supreme Court in my lifetime, particularly for these kinds of issues. And I guess my question is, what's it going to take to get that lawsuit filed? Thank you.
I can take it if you want to do it.
Thank you. That is such a great question. And I know that's a very important issue for many people, and it involves some of the most complex constitutional questions that we could ever face. And I do want to tell you, we are looking at it. We have to, as you understand, how, as Kathy mentioned, the dozens and dozens of cases that we have, and the monuments case, the ozone case, all of the federal overreach. So we do have to triage in terms of what we can put our attention to and what we can put our resources at the moment. But it is something that we're looking at and we are analyzing.
Let me answer it this way, sir. And I have great respect for you. Work with my cousin, or my wife's cousin, Mike Noel, out there in Kane, and he speaks very highly of you. I appreciate all your service. You know, when people talk about when the second coming is happening, people talk about biblical scriptures and they say it's in the 11th hour. Who knows exactly when that is? It was the 11th hour, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago. It's getting closer. They say it's getting up to it. I'm going to tell you that I've been looking at this for a while, waiting for the right Supreme Court, waiting for the right facts, waiting for the right time to file a lawsuit on that very issue, where we have a congressional delegation that won't undermine us while we're doing that, because if they do, we're dead in the water, and a governor and a legislature that are all in sync. And just like some people answer, when is the second coming? They say it's nigh. And some people say it's even nigher than it was before. I can't tell you an exact minute or hour, but what you're asking for is nigher than it's ever been before. And I think if we have this meeting by next year, maybe you'll have an answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me just say, we're suffering death by 1,000 cuts. I've seen a lot of these plans come down, and every one is more egregious than the last. Death by 1,000 cuts. If we were to, that lawsuit has never been filed. The Supreme Court has never heard that case, whether or not the federal government can maintain or control that land in perpetuity. This is a virgin case. If we lose this case, the worst that can happen is the status quo. If we win this case, the best that could happen is we could put to bed all of the issues, these 1,000 cuts that have been coming for years and years and years. I think you're the right Attorney General. I think this is the right time. I think this is the right legislature. I think this is the right Supreme Court. I encourage you with all my heart to do what I think you know we need to do. It is the only thing that is going to put to bed all the crap that we've been putting up with forever.
Appreciate that. And I don't disagree with you on anything except this one point. I'm going to push back just a little bit. If we lose this case because we brought it at the wrong time, we brought it based on the wrong arguments, we brought it based on the wrong evidence, it's not the status quo. It'll be worse. We will open the door for the federal government to be able to stomp on us even harder than they have in the past. All we have to do is look back the last time we got a really bad Supreme Court decision against us, and it has held us back for 30 years. And I'm not arguing that I think there are optimal circumstances right now, but I just wanted people to understand that it's not a matter of just filing it, and if we win or if we lose, no problem, status quo. That's not true. If we lose that case, we don't get another shot. That's it. We get one shot, and it's got to be the right shot at the right time with the right people and the right circumstances. And I appreciate the confidence. You may well be prophetic about whether I'm the guy to be able to get it done, and I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine.
Well, I'm concerned along these same lines. My family has been in the cattle business my entire life, and we have dealt with what in our house was called the Badlands Management, and we just found no recourse whatsoever. And no matter if you succeeded in one step, they got after you in the other. It's been a constant battle. What I see happening and what my concern is right now, watching tonight, is so many of the people in this room could go out of business while this is going through the courts. And so my question is, how long is it going to take going through the courts? How long do we have to hold on in such a difficult situation to be able to even get an answer?
Thank you, ma'am, for the question. And it's not lost on us, the urgency of what's at stake. I mentioned it in my opening comments. To us, it's an existential threat, meaning that it could take entire livelihoods, it can take out whole families and generations of work. We saw what happened in Nevada not too long ago with the ranching families there. We absolutely don't want that to happen. If we could file a lawsuit that we thought would be effective and that we had a chance to win tomorrow, we would have filed it already. Part of the trick, and I don't think we maybe made this point strongly enough as we've been discussing this, is we've looked at 100 different ways, consulted the top constitutional law experts, racked our brains all together. I mean, we literally sit around for hours trying to figure out a way to bring some kind of action before a final rule. And you can ask every single one of us down here, and Leland's been in those meetings as well. None of us has been able to come up with that legal argument that we believe will be able to get where we want. So we need to wait till the final Resource Management Plan is issued before we can file the lawsuit. We don't know when that is. We're guessing that it's spring of 2024 when they issue that final plan, and then we will be ready. Say, we're locked and loaded, but we can't fire yet, because if we do prematurely, again, we prejudice ourselves, then we're out of court, then we don't have a case. And so we have to wait until they make their move, and then we can file. That's no secret, and media can cover that. That's the reality of, we don't have the standing to take them on until that happens. However, before that, we can work with you all to gather more evidence to help bolster the strength of our case, which is one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is to reach out to your county commissioners. If you have information, if you have a story, so that we can add that when we're making the point to the court that the federal government has entirely ignored every single local interest. And they'll say, well, how did the federal government know? They knew because we had 10,000 comments come in. They knew because we had a state plan that was more than reasonable. We knew because we kept telling them, these are the stories of the people who are impacted, whose lives and livelihoods could be lost, and they absolutely blew right by them. That's our best way to get the court to turn back this very draconian policy, this plan. So I want you to know that's why we're here, because we didn't want to just wait and add to your stress and your worry. Now, I'm pretty sure that we're not necessarily helping. You're going to walk away and go, oh, that didn't really do it for me. But like I said before, our goal was at least to come down and try to give you some hope that somebody's listening to you and someone's on your side and someone's fighting for you. I can't guarantee success, but I can guarantee we're going to fight like hell.
I don't want to take Wade Barney's time, so I'll make this brief. I call these special interest groups like SUA and Western Watershed and Grand Canyon Trust Al-Qaeda. They're like our terror cell because they're constantly litigating us. We've beat them. Todd Phillips, you know that. I called you the day we won that big lawsuit on the monument on 21 allotments. Western Watershed thought they were just going to sue us and we were going to lay down and they were going to take 21 allotments. Well, Judge Wattups dismissed it from the bench. That was a big win. That was 21 allotments. And that was that was right, maybe in my first 2 terms, and we worked on it hard. We worked on it with this office, the Attorney General, okay? And we won that. SUA, they're the scum of the planet. They sued us. We beat them. You know what? They can be beat. I'm just telling you. How do I know that? Grand Canyon Trust, same thing. We've stopped them from trying. They've tried to get a case against us, and we've stopped it prior. So don't give up. You know, these terror organizations like SUA and all the bad people that this is coming from, they're running the federal government right now. I guarantee you. They're the ones that's going to pick the alternative, and they're the ones that wrote that alternative D and C, the special interest groups. And we're going to beat them again, okay?
Just have one thing to add to that, and I got to give a shout out to our legislature, who back in 2016 passed a law that every county and the state will produce a county resource management plan. And I think it took us 2 years to get all those county resource management plans put together, and then we developed the state resource management plan along with those, so they were all aligned. That's an extra bit of ammunition that we are using not only in the planning process, but will also help us if we have to go to litigation on this. So a shout out to our legislature and the executive branch who have been supportive of that, because what we're doing is we're being very systematic in how we set these things up. And I know there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that you're not all aware of sometimes, and trust me, you don't want to be aware of it because you have businesses to run, but that's what our job is. Our job is to be there to to set these things up so when things like this happen, we have the ammunition to fight back. Second thing, don't forget, politics change. And while we're in a political situation right now that is very unfavorable to what's going on and to our livelihoods, it changes. We saw that with the last administration. So if it changes again, you have our word that we'll be working with the new administration to change that as well. So keep the faith, my friends. Keep the faith. It's hard, but keep the faith.
Go ahead, Wade.
I just wanted to take a minute and thank Garfield County, the state attorney's office. I imagine Kane County is here represented somewhere, and the attorneys, and especially all of you people that showed up this evening. I think that this is a battle, and we are fighting, and we need to hold the title of liberty just a little bit higher and work a little bit harder towards doing this. Just like they said, don't give up. Now I want to address this group as far as accountability. You know, we were told to write letters to the addresses, and we have written them. I don't know if they throwed mine in the garbage can or not. How many of you have got any response that they received your... There's nobody here. Does somebody see the letters that come in? The government's got to be held accountable, the BLM. I think they're throwing the ones that are for this open right in the garbage can. You know, back in the 80s, when the CO2 gas was on the east of Escalante, on the plateau there, I received a book that was that thick. It had every letter that was written on that. I think that we need to see the letters that were written and turned into them, and I think it needs to be posted so that we can see if they kept my letter or garbaged it. And we're in, all these people here are in the fight. Go ahead.
If you submit them online, that link, a lot of the times the comments will show up depending on if you're what website you're on. I don't know what link you showed, but it will publish it so you can see that it was actually received. But Dave, did you have a comment?
Just to comment on that. So one thing about the BLM is we're a cooperating agency. And so we do have access to things before they're published. And what we'll do is with Garfield and Kane County, we will reach out and make sure as comments come in, we'll ask to see those and make sure we're receiving all the comments.
Do you think they'll give you all of them?
I think so. I mean, we can look for specific
You're
ones.
a lot more
To
trusting
kind of
than
a test
I am.
case.
Take a picture of their...
Yes, take a picture of your comments before you send them. That'll help as well. But to be fair, the consultant that they have, they've been really good about giving us the information we asked for as far as they're very organized. That they're working with the consultant, they're very professional, and so I will give them that. I don't have a lot of good things to say about the BLM, but their consultant is very good, and I do trust that the comments are being received, but we will verify that.
Can you verify it and get a book compiled just like they did on the CO2 gas, where everybody's letter in it? I'd like to know how many's from Garfield County, Kane County, Sevier County, Wayne County, and how many is from New York City.
I don't think that'll be an issue.
Okay. I really appreciate all of you coming down and taking your time to be here. I do. I think we're in a battle on this, and I think that we need to stand up and take our liberty back. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Wade is a real warrior. Maisie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Maisie. I'm 18 years old, and my family runs cows on the desert. And I'm wondering, if we lose our rights to this, how will we get them back?
You won't get them back. And that's why this is such an important fight. and we need everyone, including you, Maisie, young people. We need people of all ages and all backgrounds to be using whatever voice they have. Even social media helps, because oftentimes in the social media world, you only hear one particular flavor of an ideal or a philosophy. It helps if you start using your voice. But it's a great question. That's why I say it's existential, meaning it's zero sum. Once it's gone, it's gone. They don't come back, and that's why we're here, because we're elected to or appointed to protect your rights, and that's why we don't sleep. You can ask my team. I text them at 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. They don't always answer, but because we're working around the clock to make sure that you and your family, and then when you have your own family and your kids and your grandkids, they'll have the same quality of life, the same liberties that your ancestors enjoyed, and that you'll still be able to enjoy this beautiful county the same way that your family always has. So we're fighting, but we're going to try to do everything we can to make sure that those rights aren't entirely gone before you're old enough to enjoy them.
So if we ever go down to Plan C, can we ever come back up?
Yes, and that's another, someone mentioned it. This is one part of the fight. Another part of the fight is making sure we exercise our voice and elect a president that will be able to represent these values. Some of them have, one in particular, a proven track record. You saw what President Trump did when he was here the last time. Leland Pollock, oh, I'm on board for that. Maybe was that 2028? As we're just going to wait one more cycle, Leland. So yes, the answer is yes. It can switch back. It's what Reg was saying, and so what we're fighting for is, what if it doesn't change? What if we have 4 more years? What if things don't change? We have to fight as if they're not going to change. But our hope and our prayer is that a new administration could come in and give us not just plan A, but something on the other side. Why is it that our only choices are bad choices? Why aren't we getting choices that are good choices? I was joking with them earlier about, and I hope there's no jewelers in here because I'll probably offend you, but I was like, yeah, we get really excited when you see that like 90% off jewelry sale and you think you're getting a bargain. It's what they were talking about before, because you didn't realize they marked it up 2,000% to begin with. Right now, we're not, except for Plan A, those aren't great options for us as Utahns. So do whatever you can to help us elect a president and elect representatives in Congress and the Senate who will fight for these, elect state representatives and senators like Senator Hinkins who will fight for these issues. Thank you again, Maisie. Appreciate you being here.
Was Maisie? Maisie. Great question. Use social media. Your generation is great at that, but we really need to reach like the East Coast and the West Coast, and what's on social media now is kind of a one-sided story, like the Attorney General was saying. We need you to tell your story. I have a niece over in Wayne County and one over in Iron County, and they do an awesome job of telling their story from that perspective, and it makes a difference. And we need you out there telling your story so that we do get the right people in power that will keep our rights and protect those rights. And politics change, so let's make sure that we have those stories out there and those stories are told.
2 quick points. Taylor Grazing Act, I will always go back to that. there's some legal authority out there that essentially says that when the Taylor Grazing Act was passed in 1934, they created what was called Taylor grazing districts, and within those districts were grazing allotments, right? And so those allotments and those districts that those allotments are in were federally created in 1934 because they were chiefly valuable for grazing. That's kind of another key term. And so remember that they're chiefly valuable for grazing. And so there's some legal opinion out there that says essentially if a grazing allotment is retired, that is not a permanent retirement. That can be revisited in future plans. And so that's difficult to do, right? It's hard to get a ratchet to spin the other direction if that's the direction that's going, right? But it's possible. And so that's something too I would put in my comment letter. If my allotment is at risk, say, you know what, my allotment is chiefly valuable for grazing as of 1934, and it still is. That's never changed. Legally, that's never changed. And they have to prove it. Exactly. That was my second point. Thank you. Because essentially, in your comment letter, say, so you're going to either A, retire my allotment, or B, reduce my AUMs, right? Because you're talking about losing your rights. So there's two different ways that can happen, right? They can retire the whole allotment, or they can reduce your AUMs to where you're no longer economically viable. So you need to put in your comment letter and say, well, A, you never proved that this isn't chiefly valuable for grazing anymore, and B, you haven't justified a reduction in AUMs. Where's your science? Where's your landscape health evaluations proving that you can reduce my AUMs? And document that, put that in a comment letter, because like I said, a retirement can be reversed under a different land plan, and AUMs can be restored under a different land plan, because like Reg said, politics change. So keep that in mind, don't lose heart.
So one thing to add to your comment letter on this one specifically, because we're dealing with a monument, and in a monument, they have declared certain objects out there as needing protection, right? These same objects have been protected, basically, have not been impacted, right, by grazing for as long as we all have been here. So also make them point out how grazing my animals here now justifies a reduction, because you show me the impact that grazing has had on any of the objects, quote unquote, that have been called out in the monument. I mean, we have things like 50 Mile being called out as an object. How is grazing going to impact 50 Mile, right? It's not. We know that. So make them respond to you in how grazing impacts any object cited inside your allotment.
Thank you.
If you want a future job as a lawyer in the AG's office, please come talk to us too, because we'd love to help you get to law school.
Well, let me give you a little background on this little gal right here. From about day one when she was born, I believe they put her in a saddle soon after that, I believe. What generation are you farming?
The sixth.
The sixth. That's her grandpa right over there. Grandpa and grandma, there's a grandmother back here. But let me tell you what, the other morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, I could hear some equipment running right behind my house. It happened to be a baler. Guess who was in that baler? That little gal right there. Reg, meet your cousin, okay? Just so you know, your cousins. Anyway, appreciate it, Maisie. Appreciate all you do. You got to go out and talk to your friends at school and others, get them involved. We all need to be involved. It's about us right now. We need to stand together. Appreciate you.
Seventh.
We missed a generation there.
There is no age restriction on who can comment either. So have your children tell their story, even your young ones, that they want to grow up and be the 8th generation. So get your young kids involved too and comment.
Good point, Commissioner.
Well, I'm glad there's no age restriction, because I probably won't see how this thing will turn out in a few years. Leland, if you go to Washington, please leave Michelle in Panguitch, would you please? My name is Norman McKee. I live in Panguitch. I grew up in a farming ranching area in Cache Valley, and now I go up there and see the... Yeah, I'll get to that. Where our old farm was is all just a bunch of mega mansions now, and I'm concerned with how lands are managed, and this is one of my concerns, because I worked 55 years ago, moved to Kanab and then back to Panguitch and worked Garfield County is wildlife, state wildlife. After I retired, the monument had been created, and one of our congressmen and the director of the Division of Natural Resources nominated me to be on the Monument Committee, which I was for 14 years. It was confusing, and it's very complicated now as we see all the different things with regard to management of both public and private lands. I'm concerned that with where our future is, much of Utah is public lands, and a lot of that's because we have mountains and deserts. And the Homestead Act made it so that most of the valley areas could be made privatized and farmed in that, but a lot of the other lands can't be done that way. Only ranching or billionaires from New York or China buying it for their to put in their cabins up in the hills or something like that. And I'm concerned that we keep our lands public as much as we can, whether they're in federal or state. The concern I have is if it's in state, is we don't have the PILT funds, and we have to, in order to raise tax monies, we would have to sell some of those lands, and that would be the most unique lands that would be sold. It wouldn't be the top of the mountain or out in the desert. So that's a concern, but it's a real complicated with the federal land management, keeping them too. So I appreciate these people and the work that they do, trying to make some sense out of some of this, that hopefully the future will be good in how our public lands are managed. The monument, as I've stated in a couple of news articles, I don't care whether it's a monument or not a monument, just so it's managed sensibly, proactively for the future of our children and grandchildren, and those who have livestock and other things there. I'm concerned with some of the organizations that have stopped some of our projects that we tried to do there, that I tried to initiate. And so we need to have some sensible management and use of the monument, not ruin it, not take it away, and not use it at all, just some sensible, proactive, sensible management. And I hope that happens in the future. Thank you guys and gals for all that you do. Appreciate that.
Darrell?
I'm Darrell Spencer. I'm fourth generation rancher here. My great grandfather helped settle Orderville, just over the hill from here. I have 10 grandkids, they're sixth generation. This is our culture. This is our ancestral lands. I live in Johns Valley, part of Reggie's old ranch. We run. If this plan goes through, Plan C or D, we'll lose about 4,000 AUMs. I think the biggest problem is people don't understand where we get those, how we get those rights. You know, that we buy those. If you do the math, what are those AUMs worth right now? Probably at least 300. You're saying 500? What's 4,000 times 500? 2 million. We're just gone, done. And you wonder why these ranchers are willing to fight tooth and nail? Because you're going to take everything they've worked their whole life for. And I'm real glad to see you guys from the state of Utah here and calling them grazing rights, because the last meeting I went to, they weren't called grazing rights. And they're trying to convince us we don't have rights. And if we believe that, we'll lose them. And that'll just be the first one. Then they're going to come after everything else, your water rights, your property rights. They're already coming after our right to speak. But we need your guys' help to get the message out that we have rights to these lands. We bought and paid dearly for these, and they're still paying for them. And they're just going to wipe them out, take them away from us. They're slowly chipping off a little bit at a time. We need your help. We need your help getting people to understand that, because that's the biggest dilemma. We can go against the government. We'll never outgun them. We'll never win that way. We need the hearts of the people. We need them to understand. And if they understand what we're losing and how we got them, then it's a fight we can win. I haven't been to a meeting for a long time because I've been disgusted with a lot of the politicians the state sent down to us. Not Leland, not Jerry, none of our commissioners. They've been great. But we just, if you guys want to believe they're not rights, go ahead, but we're going to, and we always will. And so I'm real glad to hear you guys even saying they're rights. We've been here a long time. We plan on staying. Thanks.
There's not much you can say else to that, but I do want people to recognize that those allotments are people's either retirement or they pass them on to the next generation as an inheritance. And so we're not only looking at, when they cut these, we're not only looking at the annual losses we are to our economy, but you're destroying people's lives, livelihoods, retirements, and inheritance.
Thanks. Joey.
Hi, I'm AJ Martell in Escalante. I'm a soft-handed accountant. Sorry. But that's my real job. My other job, I ended up as an editor for The Byway, which is a local newspaper. Thanks a lot, Elaine. But we've talked a lot about public lands issues and access issues in recent months. And really, it does seem to boil down to access. You know, we've got the idea to keep public lands public. Well, I say that those public lands also need to be accessible. That is what the real fight seems to be about. And the problem that we're facing now is that a lot of the public doesn't understand what public lands are or how they are used. They don't understand the nature of rights connected with those lands. Think about it. The most vested rights, the earliest settlers to use a lot of these lands are grazers. And people outside the area do not understand that. And, you know, even President Clinton in the original 1996 proclamation paid lip service to these rights, but then, at the behest of special interest groups, stripped the access to those rights. We have the same pattern happening today, where we have special interest groups who are fighting tooth and nail to restrict access to those lands, making those with rights unable to use them. So it's really the resource management plan where the rubber meets the road, not necessarily the proclamation to designate a monument. The problem is that the public doesn't understand what is actually going on here. What we're looking at here is, I think, one of the greatest takings going on in America today. And if the public understood what was going on here, they would be outraged. But if you watch the news and you listen to Washington, D.C. pundits or politicians, the media, even people on the Wasatch Front haven't got a foggy clue about what's going on here. Our very own Utahns do not understand. I grew up on the Wasatch Front, I know. You guys are doing a great job on the litigation front. We need that. That is a defensive position. But I think that we need to focus on something that's more important, long run, is we need to focus more on what happens in Congress to legislate things like repeal of the Antiquities Act or amendments to environmental laws that make it easier for us to use our rights here. But unfortunately, and can you imagine how even our conservative lawmakers in Arkansas or Kentucky would respond if we talked about the appeal of the Antiquities Act? They haven't got a clue. They don't know anything about that stuff. You can't even get even conservative lawmakers to understand what's going on here. I think that the state needs to focus a lot more on just a normal public relations outreach to educate the public and help them understand what the issues are. Help them understand who's actually taking care of the land here. And if they will understand that, hopefully that will trickle up to politicians across the nation, and maybe we can even get some bipartisan support to change some of these laws that have so long plagued these cowboys that are notoriously and painfully inarticulate in telling their story. So unfortunately, their story is being told by the environmentalists. Like you said, one-side story. We need this story being told, and it needs to be told from right here.
Joey? I can respond to that. And I know you're telling the truth because I try to go and educate Washington, D.C., and it costs money. And I try to go and educate, and Jerry does, Dave does, but I've been back to D.C. a lot. And I've got a little fan club in Boulder that hate me, and that's okay. I take it as a compliment because they are constantly wanting to see what it costs to go to Washington, D.C., what it costs to go to the legislature. Well, if you want to know if you're getting your benefit, you bet you are, because I tell your voice. I'm your voice back in D.C. I'm your voice. Sean will tell you that on the General Reyes in Salt Lake City and at the legislature, because you have no voice really unless your elected officials go and tell your story. So Joey, you're doing a great job with your paper. Keep it up because you educate the public right. And you know, you're spot on, and just as Garfield County residents, just keep supporting me to go on, and Jerry and Dave and whoever needs to go, to keep going and telling your story.
Yeah, I can attest that your county commissioners do a phenomenal job. I travel back to DC with them once in a while, and they do a phenomenal job. I got to give a shout out to our legislature as well. 2 years ago, they gave our office about $250,000 to run a public information campaign called Management Makes the Difference. It's the opposite of the SUA campaign, which is, you know, lock it up. So we talked forest management, we talked grazing, we talked all of those things. It was phenomenally successful. It blew every social media metrics out of the water, and we were pleasantly surprised, but the media company that helped us with it, they were just blown away. They were like, wow, this is phenomenal. So, not to put our legislature on the spot, but if we wanted to continue that, we would need a little bit more funding for that. But we're working on that. We will continue to work on that. That is part of what our office does as well, as try to educate the public. And I got to give a shout out to 5 county and 6 county associations of government, which is all your county commissioners are involved in that. Every year they do a congressional tour. And it started off, 10, 15 years ago, they were giving our staffers a tour and our congresspeople a tour. And about 6 years ago, the focus changed and we started giving Democrats from the East Coast and the West Coast this tour, because we didn't need to convince our congresspeople, right? They were on board with us. So the first year we did that 6 years ago, we had 1 Democrat staffer from Wisconsin show up. She was so amazed by the tour and what she learned that year, she went back, and the next year we had 5. Now we're up to about 20, and we're out of scholarships. So again, we need more. If we could get more scholarship money to bring them back, we could do that. It's made a world of difference when I go back to DC, because let's face it, right now, you're not getting anything through Congress unless you have bipartisan support. But I'm able to go into Democrats' offices and we're able to talk about grazing, or we're able to talk about wild horses and burros, or fuels management on our forests, and they get it because they were here, they experienced. So we are doing that. We're 50 years behind. These environmental groups have been doing this for 50 years. Their message is so far ahead of us. We've got some catching up to do, but we are working on it. We will continue to work on it. Your elected officials are doing a phenomenal job. Just wanted to pass that along.
And I'll just say that we have been talking to Attorney General's offices in other states and making them aware of this issue, especially the Antiquities Act issue. As Attorney General Reyes mentioned, we're filing our brief in the 10th Circuit next Monday, and the following week we anticipate we will have a multi-state amicus brief from other states supporting this issue and raising the awareness across the country. And this is an issue that they should be concerned with too, because if Congress gives the president some authority that is completely unfettered and has absolute discretion, that could bleed into other areas as well. So people are concerned about this.
My colleagues, the other 26 Republican attorneys general that we've worked hard to get elected, conservative AGs, have put a moratorium on me when it comes to public lands. They're so tired of me talking about it. But to your point, it hasn't sunk in with them yet. They're great, but they just have no idea. They've not lived it. It's not part of their experience. And we're going to just keep talking about it. So again, thank you. I appreciate, as Leland said, this is a really good stuff.
Okay, well, my name is Jeannie Shakespeare, and I do not have cattle, and I don't have land, and I don't have all of the things that we are here fighting for, but I am fighting for my culture and my freedom, because I am a recipient, my ancestors, this is the land that we grew up in, and this is the kind of culture and lifestyle that we enjoy. And we've asked for the big guns here tonight to take our voice to Washington. He's asked something of us. He's asked for comments. How did you all get here? Did you get here because of a text or a phone call or a message in some way? Well, what I want to do is I want to encourage each and every one of you to go home tonight and spread the word. Text, message, call. They need our comments on this resource management plan by the 8th of November. We've got a big crowd here tonight, and I echo the frustration of us coming to government scoping plans and local input, because it doesn't go anywhere. We know that. Here's our chance for it to go somewhere. And not only here, but don't let it stop here. Get your comments in, get all of your family to get comments in, address your culture, address how it impacts you. You people, our local people, are the ones that respond to emergencies, that take care of the visitors that come here. Put that in your comments. It's overtaxing us. The monument doesn't provide rangers or EMTs or rescue personnel. We do, as the county, as citizens. Put that in your comments. This impacts us all. And I don't want to see our way of life go by the wayside. And if we can get your support, you deserve our support. And if you get your comments, then send your comments to your commissioners so they know how many people in their community have commented. So they can go to battle for that. So they can say, as Wade Barney said, how do we know? Well, send them to your commissioners, your responses. Send them to them, flood them. Flood their email. I know you're gonna hate that, but flood your emails, flood their emails with the responses that you have sent to the BLM, to the resource management plan on your comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I'll just add a few pieces to that. I'm Taylor Glover. I'm the Government Affairs Director for King County. And that was a great comment. A couple things I think we could all sit here and talk about grazing until we're blue in the face, and we all care about that deeply and are obviously fighting the fight. But there's other pieces of this that if we leave it out of our comments are going to affect the grazing equally as much. One of those pieces that we've talked about is the transportation management. The linchpin for public land use is access. If we went and said, hey, we will trade you, we will never fight you again on access. We won't fight you on another road. We won't fight you on another, anything to do with access if you will give us grazing. They would say, okay, because they would rather take away the access, turn it into wilderness, than manage the grazing or take away grazing from us. And so if we don't put things in our comments, if you don't go back and put in what kind of access you need to accomplish what you do on public lands, whether that's grazing, whether that's hunting, whether that's family recreation, whether that's camping, whether that's gathering firewood, if you don't go back and put into your comment that about travel management, about access to these public lands, and we allow them to close roads, that is the linchpin for all of it. That is the nuclear bomb. That is the overall goal, is to turn this into wilderness. That's the long-term solution, and how they do that is to cut out access. And so we hit grazing hard, and we, as we should, but we can't let some of these other things go and forget about these when you go to put these things into your comments. Because if we do, we will find that even though we may win grazing, we actually lost. Thank you.
I've talked a lot tonight, so this is going to be brief because Chad Booth's getting antsy and we got a couple of people wanting to comment right here. So, no, but why do they attack grazing the most and the hardest, right? It's because it's the rancher who's investing time, money, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into that land. There's a connection there, right? Those AUMs that we've talked about. Why do they attack roads so much? Well, because same thing, there's an investment there. And for the last 3 comments or so, you've all kind of hit at it, and it's brought a story to my mind. There was a guy named Martin Niemöller. He lived in Germany in the late 1930s when the Nazi Party took over. Maybe you guys know this story. He was a preacher. And Martin Niemöller, he says essentially, and I may butcher this, so forgive me, people with Google who can go look up the quote. But essentially he said, first they came for the Jews, and I'm not a Jew, so I said nothing. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I'm not a unionist, so I said nothing. And then they came for the evangelicals, and I'm not an evangelical, so I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And I feel like that summarizes this room right here. There's a lot of cowboy hats, and yes, you guys are the focal point, like Taylor said. The roads are next. If they can get those first 2 dominoes to fall, the rest of the issues follow. The recreation, the backpacking, the bikers, the hikers, all of that follows. And so, I love that, and I can't remember your name, I apologize, but you started your comment, you said, I don't have cows, but this is my community, this is my culture, this is my heritage. We've got a kid running a newspaper over here doing a great job. Does he have cows? No. But these people recognize that if we lose that first, the other dominoes fall. So let's take a lesson out of history here. And even though it doesn't affect you, you know what? You got to speak up, because someday when they come for you, there's going to be nobody left to talk for you. And maybe that's an extreme example. Maybe it's not.
Go ahead.
I'm going to change the course a little bit. I'm Dan Child. I'm actually from Utah County. Came down here because for almost 60 years I've been recreating in this area with motorized recreation. And a few years, 20 years ago, we bought property in Kane County down in Church Wells for the express purpose of being able to ride in the area that was ultimately became the monument. My comments are going to be a little bit all over the place, but I am one person from the Wasatch Front that does appreciate the grazing. Last week, I attended the BLM open house in Salt Lake City. There were 3 of us there that were non-SUA people. Everybody else in that room, we were literally swimming in the SUA.
Would you say that again? Would you repeat that again, please?
We were literally swimming in the sewer. And it did start to stink, according to Brett. But a couple of things came from that meeting that were very interesting to me. One is I asked several of the BLM people who made the final decisions. 5 out of 6 could not tell me. The sixth one listed off a list of people from Washington, D.C. and the local monument manager are who make the decision. The cards are stacked against us, people. It's going to be hard. We have to make comments. And as they've said, as many as we can. Just last night, somehow, I'll back up a little bit, somehow I got on SUA's mailing list on Facebook. I'm actually a top fan. And everything I put on their post, I don't know why I haven't been banned yet, but everything I put on there is condemning what they're doing. And I get in big arguments with people. Just last night, I got in an argument with a woman about the Moab situation. And she told me, literally in her words, go away and stop whining. And I said, you know, the problem is the majority of people don't understand this. The vast majority of people really want to have access to their public lands. Your words. Access is the key. I said, the problem is most of SUA's members live in the cities. To them, public lands, a large swath of public land is Central Park in New York City. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what we're talking about. And then SUA throws out the propaganda where they take the few bad apples of somebody on an ATV that tears something up, somebody grazing that has a problem, goes through fences or something like that. And these people don't have any understanding of what they're dealing with. I spent my career in the water industry, reclaiming water, and I spent many hours in the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C., going back there with organizations trying to win our points. I always insisted on visiting the people that were against us. Some of the people liked going with it. And I'd be the first one as a public citizen, if you want somebody to go back to D.C. and walk the halls of Congress with you guys, as a citizen, I volunteer. I'm there. I love doing it, and I like talking to them, and I'd encourage anybody else in this room to do the same thing. Because the only way we're going to win this is for people to become educated on what's going on and fighting the court battles. And I really appreciate you, to all of you, but state people today especially, that are coming down and making the point that we are going to fight these battles, and we're going to win ultimately, but it's not, this is one battle in a really big war. It's not going to be quick, unfortunately. And, you know, personally, I think we should dissolve and disband the BLM and get all the lands back into the state's hands. But that's legislative, and we need to get that going as well. But I thank you for your time. I thank you for being here, and keep up the fight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and thanks for your help.
I couldn't agree more, and we have a guy that come down from Salt Lake City as well, that walks the halls of our own capital with me, that helps a lot. You know, we've got a lot of good legislation, and I can tell you, Mike Noel ran a bill on the transfer of public lands before he retired, and it says right in the state bill. In fact, the guy on the end over there wrote the bill, Mark Ward, our own attorney, Garfield and Kane County's own attorney, okay, that says if the state gets those lands, they will always be public lands, your lands. The law clearly. Somebody doesn't want me to talk. There's somebody from SUA here. So it says in the state law that Mike Noel run that they have to stay public lands. They have to stay there. So that's a good state law. Go ahead, Brett.
You'll need to talk loud, right?
My name's just spell it out there.
So I'm Brett Stewart. First, I want to thank you all for being here. I've been very pissed off, just like my hat, when the people are pissed. And I thought people like Blue Ribbon and myself and some other people that engaged are kind of the only ones doing it, but this is refreshing, believe me. I'll sleep much better tonight, so thank you. I've been working with Reg on a few other things, and so it's good to see it, and Leland, thank you so much for putting this together. My biggest question is on county B roads, D roads, and RS 2477s, when the BLM and the Forest Service was established, they said we don't have the money to build the roads to the Forest Service, or to the loggers, the miners, the ranchers. And he says, go out and build the roads and we'll guarantee you access forever. And so we're sitting here fighting, defending our D roads, RS 2477. Why do we have to do that? Why are we always on the defense?
And I work on a lot of D roads, which is mostly our trail systems. The B roads we know get graded. And the acting authority of those is the county and the state are partners on all these roads. So why are we not enforcing it through possibly the sheriff, elected officials, or law enforcement and telling them to quit harassing us? And we have these roads, you're the acting authority, and don't bother us on it and continue to have our access on it. Is that a question or is it a comment, or how would we look at that?
Well, offensively, I think the reason my mic got cut is there probably is somebody from SUA that's behind that.
Probably.
So they know we're on the offense, Brett.
Yeah.
And Kathy will go into detail.
Okay, the RS 2477 was a grant of a right-of-way. So the federal government still holds the surveying estate. State has a dominant estate and the right to use the right-of-way. The courts have held that because it's an easement situation, if there's a dispute as to title, you have to go through the courts and quiet title. So we have affirmatively filed our RS 2477 lawsuits in all of the counties where we have BLM land to quiet title to the roads that the state and the counties are claiming in those counties. Now the issue in the Forest Service is a different situation. We have to prove to quiet title, we have to prove that the roads were used continuously for a period of 10 years prior to a reservation.
Correct.
So in BLM, the situation, that date is 1976, October 21st, 1976. In the Forest Service situation, so we can get testimony from people. It's hard right now because a lot of the people are getting old and it's harder to find people who actually use the roads. But we do have those witnesses, and that's why we're out taking these depositions to preserve testimony. With the Forest Service, the reservations were in the early 1900s. We don't have live testimony, and we're trying to figure out how we can get like family records or historical records that would prove 10 years of continuous use prior to the reservation of the forest, of the particular forest that might be at issue. So the BLM and Forest Service situations are different, but we're trying to establish the law on BLM land so that we can move forward with regard to other reservations, other like Forest Service.
Okay, so because that was established in the very beginning, don't we have the right to, as a state of Utah, is there some legislation we can run or something that can be introduced in Congress?
We have been working on some legislation to have presented in Congress on how we would establish RS 2477. The difficulty is, getting something through Congress.
Is there any bills being introduced in Congress so that when the next, hopefully, the administration, once they come in, that it'll be prepared, it'll be introduced and ready to enforce once we hopefully take back the Senate and we have the House and and the president?
We are working on legislation that would,
Prepare
that would
before there?
establish a process
Okay.
so that you wouldn't have to go through the courts, that would say, if you can show this kind of evidence, then it's an RS 2477. For example, theoretically, if you've done maintenance and repair, if the county has done maintenance and repair on a County B road, it doesn't need the 10 years of continuous use because the county accepted the right-of-way by doing that maintenance and repair. But it's something we still have to prove in court.
What about a D road?
I beg your pardon?
What about a D road?
D roads, if there's maintenance and repair that county has records for, those work. But a D road is generally used by, generally created and maintained by public use.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to show that period of 10 years of continuous use. And that is state law. In RS 2477 didn't have any of these particular evidentiary concerns. So when the initial case the seminal case about RS 2477 was called SUA versus BLM, and it was back in 2005. And basically the court said, because there's no case law on this, we have to adopt state law. And so they adopted the state law that applies to public dedication of a road. And that's where the 10 years of continuous use comes from.
Okay, so, and by the way, I'm working on a lot of trail systems with Garfield, and they're the best. So I want to thank them.
And I just want to remind, I know a lot of people are leaving, but please remember there's a deadline on these comments, so please get them in as soon as possible. We need them before November 9th or 8th.
I just wanted to make one quick clarification on, if we're going to talk travel management for a second, in the plan. They're not closing roads in the plan. They're making zones where they have designations for the roads, right? So it's important that you don't just say, don't close X, Y, or Z road. Say, I want alternative A, or, you know, all roads to be considered during travel management plan, because it's the tricky thing that Dave Dodds was talking about earlier. They're not actually, they'll tell you, we're not closing any roads. But if they go with D, all roads could be closed, right? So it's tricky the way they do it, and I just wanted to make that clarification for this meeting, for the monument. On travel designation, you want alternative A. If you have any questions on this, get with my team or myself. All the commissioners have our numbers. We're happy to talk you through that, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
So 7 miles. Under the previous administration, yeah, and that's the V road, and that's going to make Commissioner Taylor really mad.
My father built that road.
So under these alternatives, they are going to close a designated route, which is the V road.
I'm a little late on my comment. I really don't know if I should be making a comment. I hope Hinkins is still here, but it looks like he's, oh, he is. There you are. Well, first off, I apologize. If you'd have sent me an email, I'd have come join you for the Sewer Fest, because I was in Salt Lake. So, Attorney General, with respect, I want to address a point that I have been thinking a lot about this week. I wasn't going to say anything here, but I think I should at this point. I have been watching this public land debate since Ronald Reagan stood up and said that he was a sagebrush rebel. And I have followed it. I followed it through his administration. I followed it through George Herbert Walker Bush. Nothing happened. You know, of any significant status. I was hopeful when George W. Bush came in, and you know, a few things happened, but nothing really happened. It's like every time we get to a precipice where we say, it's easy street, and they're going to fix things, nothing happens. Well, Donald Trump made something happen, but it only happened so far down the line. And I would like our congressional delegation to consider the fact that most of the people that are blocking these and signing off on these plans are not appointees of the administration. They are civil service workers who, some of them blatantly, are going against directives being put to them by the administration of the department they are in, or the division or whatever, whether it's the Bureau or the Department of Interior. They are countermanding the elected officials' directives. There needs to be a change in the Civil Service Code that can allow for immediate termination of somebody who does not follow the advice and not advice, but the dictates of a current administration. It needs to work its way down through the levels, because you guys saw what happened with Grand Staircase. They shrunk the monument. I never saw them take one sign down. In 4 years of that, I never saw them take one sign down. I never saw them really actually change anything on the outside that shrunk the monument. And so that is something that I strongly believe needs to change, and I think we need to push our legislative branch to actually address that. And I'm going to trust you people with better connections than I to do that, and I'll just keep trying to tell the stories that you guys can't seem to elucidate, because we love talking about rural Utah and county seat for 11 years, and there you go. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Chad. We're starting to lose a lot of people. It's getting late. Unless there's somebody that's just really needing to say something, we're going to wrap it up here. Joe, you got something for us? Okay.
When I look up here at this alternative D, it doesn't only affect ranchers, which it is affecting greatly. It affects recreation. It's going to affect search and rescue.
Yes.
I can't get in there.
You're right.
I'm a 78-year-old man. I can't walk 300 miles across there.
You're absolutely right.
We need to look at that as well. And I think that needs to come out in the people's comments. You know, I certainly appreciate the rancher's viewpoint. I was an old farm boy from southern Iowa. So I know what the livestock means. And it still means a lot to me. But we need to look at all aspects. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Anyway, we appreciate everybody taking the time, coming out, joining with us. We have a fight on our hands. We need to be aware of that, and we need to be active and involved in everything and help making the right decisions and choices. Let's stand together. Now, travel home safe, be safe, but get your family involved, your friends. Commissioner Tabbs.
Jerry, we just have a public announcement here for a conference tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow night in Kanab at the Kanab Center, Kane County Commission. I've talked them into sponsoring Ken Ivory to do a federalism training. It's more of a thing where where's the line? Where's the constitutional line between state, federal, and local, and the people? And it's extremely good. And if nothing else, the guy's a great, entertaining speaker. So I encourage you to come to Kanab at 7 o'clock, or I'm going to put it on Zoom, and oh gosh, go to my Facebook page, Doug Heaton, and I'll make sure it's there. I'm sorry, I should have had that.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Doug Heaton does a lot of hard work for all of us here in rural Utah. We appreciate him. Okay. If nothing else, we'll be adjourned, and thank you and travel safe. We appreciate you.